Now stay tuned to the following radio broadcast.
You're listening to the Victory Station, AM 1360. We're glad you chose us. Thank you.
It's Impact with the Florida Star, the largest, oldest, and most read African-American newspaper in Northeast Florida and South Georgia. And now, here's the host, the publisher of the award-winning Florida Star, Clara McLaughlin.
This is Opio. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Impact. We got an incredible, informative show lined up for you today. First, we're going to be talking about Juneteenth. Whether it's before or after Juneteenth, we always like to give you that information dealing with the emancipation of black people in this country. Also, we did an interview of Corrine Brown a year ago, and we're going to be playing some clips from that interview and a history of Rosewood. But at the very end of the show, we're going to play what has become my favorite Father's Day song, right here on Impact.
Juneteenth, or June 19th, 1865, is the date that the United States government communicated freedom to the remaining human beings that were enslaved. More than 2 years earlier, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on September 22, 1862, notifying the states in rebellion against the Union that if they did not cease their rebellion and return to the Union by January 1, 1863, their slaves would be forever free. Abraham Lincoln read the proclamation, which stated in part that on the first day of January AD 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free, and the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. And I forward declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed service of the United States to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels, all sorts, in said service. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice warranted by the Constitution upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God. Those states in rebellion ignored the proclamation. In addition, the proclamation did not apply to slave-holding states that did not rebel against the Union. This meant that hundreds of thousands of blacks were not covered by the proclamation. A Union-won Civil War and Constitution Amendment would formally outlaw slavery. However, during the war, the state of Texas experienced an influx of slave owners who knew that the state was not overrun by Union troops. These slave masters, along with very little Union victories in Texas, prevented news from getting to blacks. Therefore, the enslaved human beings there did not know about the Emancipation Proclamation, which outlawed slavery in rebellious Texas. After the surrender of General Robert Lee on April of 1865, General Gordon Granger, along with over 2,000 troops, headed to Texas to communicate the news of victory and freedom to the enslaved blacks there. Granger arrived on June 18, 1865. The next day, standing on the balcony of Galveston's Ashton Villa, he read General Order Number 3, formally enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation. General Order Number 3 reads as follows. The people are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and a connection heretofore existing between them become that between employer and hired labor. The freed are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. With this general order enforcement, over 250,000 remaining blacks in Texas were freed. Juneteenth, the celebration of emancipation, was born. The original festivals included rodeos, fishing, and baseball. Certain foods became synonymous with Juneteenth celebrations, such as barbecue, ice cream, and strawberry soda. Also, there are accounts of blacks tearing off their ragged garments and throwing them into the rivers. They then adorn themselves with clothes of their former slave masters. Today, Juneteenth is celebrated in more than 200 cities around the United States. On January 1st, 1980, Juneteenth became an official state holiday in Texas, granted it full state holiday status, a day when government employees have the day off. Everyone in this country should celebrate the commemoration of this country ridding itself of slavery.
Now, we ran a 3-part series, talked about the large number of black elected officials that seems to get investigated. Is it your feeling that we were kind of way off and radical with that, or did we set the facts straight?
No, you were right on point. And what you just said about Shaka and me, and the fact that in both cases, a veteran got thrown off.
Yes, so Shaka Fatah is a congressperson right
now.
And
he's in jail.
In jail right now.
Because
the same jury situation happened where they found a juror say something, and then they go on and they take that on to the nth degree and ultimately take them off.
Yeah.
So they can't hang the jury.
Yeah.
And that same jury that did with the Shaka Fatah was a veteran.
Yes.
Same as yours.
Yes. Isn't that something?
That's amazing.
Fight with facts.
Right.
Facts with facts. You got a veteran cemetery in Jacksonville, a Corrine Brown initiative.
Right.
You got a hospital in Jacksonville, a Corrine Brown initiative. You got a Philawan Bridge, $100 million bridge, $100 million courthouse. The port got money. I mean, it's no end to the things that I've done for Jacksonville.
Tell us about the China trip. Talk about that.
Okay, the China trip. I went to Humpty Dumpty Institute, which is in New York, and they had a trip planned, and they were going to cancel it. So I raised my hand and said, I would do it. I did it in less than 3 weeks. We raised the money for 22, I think, kids to go and 3 chaperones.
22 kids with the China?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Wow.
Yes, sir. And 22 kids. And guess what? They sent somebody out to every one of those homes. And then they tried to say, well, is it just for privileged black kids? Dr. Lazaro said, I don't know none.
Right.
He said, check and see how many black kids
in the whole world that's privileged.
Trying to get visas to go to China.
Right.
Yeah, I had to pay for everything on this side. So I had to pay for the airline, their insurance. The parents had to make sure they had the passports. I paid for the visas. And when they got to China, everything was free. That was the scholarships. They went to 3 cities. They stayed at the university. And they rode the high-speed train in China. Something I've never read. And they went to 3 different cities. Something I've never done. Absolutely. I was just talking to a young lady at Austin's a few minutes ago, and I can give you her card. She says that when her mother was at Waters, her and her sister, I taught her mother. I let her mother bring her to my class at Waters. She said that her and her sister, her mother was taking class, and I said, just because you got children don't mean that you can't better yourself. Her mother now is a social worker. She is a nurse, and so is her sister.
Wow.
But so you can't even begin to say. I helped Ed Waters get their first accreditation. Dr. Lazaro gave them $500,000 because of me for scholarships.
Do you know what media received the first Eagle Award by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for being the most factual? The Florida Star. Do you know which media solely addresses issues of concern for African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know which media carries local, state, national, and international news regarding African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know the only media that carries a special section for our youth at home? And the schedule for 3 black television networks. Now you know the Florida Star. Northeast Florida's largest, oldest, and most read African American newspaper, serving since 1951 in more than 200 locations. The Florida Star. News you can use. News you can trust. The people's choice. Striving to make a difference. Subscribe today. Call 766-8834. That's 766-8834. Pick up the Florida Star at over 200 locations. Or to have it delivered, call 766-8834. The Florida Star. Speaking truth to power.
And this young man today, I didn't say anything to him. But when he came and said something to me, then I said, but he had pulled up his pants to come say something to me. And let me tell you something, when I first started my job fairs, they used to come any kind of way. In the last 10 years, they changed. They came like they was ready to go to work.
Right.
They came in corduroys or whatever, and their shirts and their pants, and they came like they was ready to go to work, and a lot of them got jobs. Mm-hmm. Who else does that? Right. And I did the plate lift, and some of the other members started doing something like that. I feel that being elected has got to be more than raising money. Mm-hmm. It's service.
Right.
Service.
Is it your feeling that the criminal justice system just rips up families and friends? So they're getting people that a guy like a son to you and other people that really
they
love
don't care
you,
nothing about
and then they drive a wedge, and now you're sitting in court against each other.
Yeah.
How you feel about that?
I feel that it is very sad. It really is. I don't, it's hard for me to talk about it. Somebody I talk to every day. Now, I can't talk to him, or it's just amazing to me. Now, let me tell you what happened. I was at the bank, and this black lady came up to me, and she said that, I'm a teacher, and she said, I'm 34 years old. And she said, all my life, you've represented me. Mm. And she said, now I don't have a voice.
Right.
She said, I don't have a voice. I always known that I had somebody that was going to stand up for me. That's now, right. Who's standing up for you?
Right.
Rosewood was a predominantly black town. There were a few white families living here, but most of the people here by far were black. And in 1923, a white woman in a town 2 miles from here, Fannie Taylor was her name, accused a black man of attacking her. It was not true, but the people believed it, and this brought a tremendous mob of white people to Rosewood, and over a period of about 4 or 5 days, they burned the town down and killed at least 8 people and possibly more.
Rosewood being a town in the South where blacks was making some progress, where they owned their own little sawmills and their little stores, and they was kind of like the role models, and they was leading by example.
During the massacre, a white man named J.W. Wright, who allowed some of the black women and children, no boys over 13, to hide in his house during the daytime to escape this mob. And late the second or third night, he allowed the train came in on this railroad track at night quietly and loaded these people up, and the depot was right behind his property. And the train took these people to Gainesville and saved their lives. So the railroad track is significant. The railroad depot site is significant because it was where the rescue took place.
I just want people to understand that if someone had not discovered this, had not thought enough to come up and remove the scrubbery and to dig down here and to find the sword and things of that nature, or to find the train station and all of these historical monuments, then we can only try to imagine the great history that was lost.
Well, what Rosewood did was it burned the history of blacks in this part of the county, but the history was not erased because we're here.
60 years ago, Rosewood in North Florida was a thriving little community of about 200 people, almost all of them black. Early in January 1923, some 1,000 whites came to town, and when they left about a week later, Rosewood had been burned to the ground. No one knows for sure how many people were killed there. The figures might be as high as 40. For 60 years, the story of Rosewood remained secret and was only uncovered recently by Florida newspaperman Gary Moore, who is writing a book on the massacre at Rosewood. Rosewood. There's a road sign proclaiming its name, but no memorial commemorating its dead. Located 9 miles from the Gulf of Mexico at Cedar Key, Florida, Rosewood today is little more than a trailer park. You search in vain for any sign of a slaughter, for any hint of the mass murder that took place here a long time ago.
Well, what did it look like?
It's a big blaze. You seen things on fire. A big blaze, just burning down, just burning up the whole thing, just burning up my grandmama's house, churches, and everything. They burned up everything we had, all our clothes and everything. Yeah, they burned it up.
Why did they burn everything?
They was mad.
But you were just little children.
I know it. What did they care? They didn't care. They killed us. I was about 8 years old.
Minnie Lee Langley was only a child when she became a refugee. Now, she's a great-grandmother. At her home in Jacksonville, Florida, we talked to her about the place where she was born, Rosewood, Florida, the place that haunts her memory.
I know they killed my aunt, and they killed my granddaddy. Made my granddaddy dug his hole. He didn't have but one arm, but they made him dug his own grave. And he prayed, and they shot him backwards in the grave.
At Rosewood?
At Rosewood.
This is where it all began, in the white settlement of Sumner, just a few miles from Rosewood. Sumner disappeared in the late 1920s when a fire destroyed the sawmill. But back in 1923, Sumner was a booming little company town. James and Fannie Taylor had a home not far from here. On the morning of January 1st, 1923, James Taylor was already at work at the sawmill when neighbors said they heard his wife Fannie screaming for help. Fannie told her neighbors that a man had entered her home and attacked her, a black man.
She opened the door, but he just knocked her down, and she was raped.
Edith Foster was 16 years old at the time. She remembers seeing the few hundred white men of Sumner joined by others from surrounding counties, even from out of state. She remembers how they grew into a mob seeking revenge.
If he hadn't ever went in on this white lady, you know, well, there'd never been nothing to it.
It's not known for sure who attacked Fannie Taylor. Some whites say it was Sylvester Carrier, a young, strong-willed black man from Rosewood. Some blacks say the attacker was a white man. They say it was Fannie Taylor's boyfriend. But a lot of people tend to think the attacker was a black convict who had escaped from a nearby chain gang. Whoever he was, he touched off a week-long killing party.
They just, a bad crew come in here, and they just wiped it off of the map.
That night, around about 9 o'clock or 8:30, there they come in a car.
They kept looking for this Sylvester, but they didn't seem to find him. And then they went back up there that night and to talk to his mother.
Calling for my aunt saying, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. And so my aunt didn't say nothing because she was scared too.
And that's when all the shooting began, you see.
They went to shooting all in the house, all upstairs in the windows.
These colored folks, you know, they were ready for it.
And I was sitting right between his legs. And he had the gun over to my right shoulder.
This was Sylvester?
Yes. I got on under him. And these old white people busted the door down. When they busted the door down, that's where he dropped them. He just dropped everyone come to the door.
He shot them?
Yeah.
Well, they killed Mr. Anders before he got to the house. They loaded him with a buckshot right here. Killed him dead. They had to leave him there.
At least 2 white men were killed that night, forcing the mob to retreat. It was then that the black women and children, 12 or 13 of them, ran from the bullet-riddled Carrier home and into the woods. Minnie Lee Langley, 8 years old at the time, ran with them.
We had a aunt with us, so scrappy. She was just like a hen with a nest of biddies. She taken us to the woods, kept us out in the woods. She kept us out in the woods almost a week.
There's swamps out there.
Well, we stayed in there. Took her like a soldier and stayed out there in the woods.
You went through those swamps?
Yes, we went all out in the woods. And she built a little bit of fire for us to stay warm because it was so cold at night.
In the morning, the mob returned, several hundred strong. Inside the Carrier home, they found Sarah, Sylvester's mother. She was dead. They also found another body, a black man. Some people say it was Sylvester, but no one really knows for sure. What we do know is what happened next. The mob set the Carrier home on fire, and they watched it burn. And then that mob grew in size, it grew in anger, and it became even more violent.
You ain't never seen a mob like that.
Fred Kirkland was a teenager when he saw the mob rampaging through Rosewood.
They went wild. There was 1,000 to 1,500 people there by that time, and they're coming in from every direction. And they was crazy. They give the high sheriff and the deputies 5 minutes to get out of sight and not come back.
They told the sheriff and the deputy to get out of town and not come back?
Get out of there. Give them 5 minutes to get out of sight.
And what did the sheriff and the deputy do?
They left there. And then they went to burning houses, killing people you never seen.
Yeah, Sunday morning they came through here, setting houses on fire. And as each one ran out, they'd shoot them, kill them. And there was a colored woman right here, lived just across here in the woods from me. And her name was Lexi Gordon. And she was sick. She had typhoid fever. And when she told her, the ones that was staying there with her, for them to go ahead and get away if they could, well, she'd just take whatever come, Well, naturally, when they set the house afire, well, she ran out towards the back. And she had a back door, Johnny, out there, and so she made for it. And they shot her before she got there.
But she had nothing to do with
it at all, whatever. And, it was the way with a lot of them, you see. That was the reason it was such a situation that we just couldn't understand. It was just a mad bunch of men come in here.
What do you think they got out of it? Why did they do
it? Motive, I guess. Satisfaction is all I can figure it out. I don't know what it was.
Satisfaction?
I reckon that was it.
Well, the whole place was in smoke around here, And they said they had destroyed all the buildings. And said that there would be no more to live here no more, They couldn't come back and live.
Miss Langley, would you go back to Rosewood with us?
I would go. If y'all don't let them bother me or nothing like that. I don't want to go there and get hurt or nothing. Yeah.
You remember?
Hello, darling.
We brought Minnie Lee Langley back to Rosewood for the first time in 60 years. We also asked Lee Ruth Davis, Leroy Carrier, and Sam Hall, all survivors of Rosewood, to come back for a day.
Oh. Hello, Sammy.
Hey. You remember her, Mr. Hall?
Yeah. Oh, she looked just up for this Marcy.
Yeah. Oh, Lord, yeah. This is Marcy.
Was that what they used to call you?
That's what they call me, Marcy.
You look just like Miss Virginia.
Yeah, my mother.
Yeah.
I'm bringing back memory that I wished I could get rid of. You know what I mean? This has been a hobby. If you just had been here to listen to all this and see some of it, then you would have known just what it was. We lost everything.
Lost everything.
You own the land?
Yeah, we own our land, all of them.
And no one ever paid you any money for this land?
No.
You just lost it?
took it.
What do you say to children today? Children like this boy, like your great-grandson, and people who didn't grow up when you grew up, and people who didn't go through what you went through, people who would say, this couldn't have happened in this country. Come on.
I would tell them like this. I said, don't ever stay in a place that white folks can surround it. Don't never stay in a place that white folks can surround it. Because if anything happens somewhere else, they'll run you out from your home, just like they did us.
Not many whites lived in Rosewood at that time, really just a handful. Among the few who did live here was a man by the name of John Wright, who owned the general store. John Wright lived in this house. It's one of the few that has survived. To blacks in Rosewood, John Wright was a hero. He opened his home to many of the women and children who were hiding from that mob. And John Wright did even more. He was able to get a message to the railroad that said, the town is on fire, send a train. And that's how many blacks escaped from Rosewood, by train. Who was on the train? You were on the train?
I was on the train. I'll never forget it. It was night when the train come there. It was 4 o'clock. When we left Mr.
4
Wright.
4 o'clock in the morning?
That's right. And he told them, conductor, to pull the train on to stop anywhere on the road that he saw women's and children, but not men, because they didn't know who the men would be.
If it hadn't been for this house.
We wouldn't have been here, because we wouldn't have had nowhere to hide.
Rosewood. You won't find an accurate account of it in any history book. Yet, about 40 people were killed here one terrifying week 60 years ago. When you think about it, far greater atrocities have happened elsewhere in the world. But Rosewood belongs to America. It's a real American horror story. The wonder is that it stayed secret so long. Minnie Lee Langley never even told her family.
I didn't want them to know that I was scouting through the woods to stay out there all night long, out there in that cold and all that stuff. I didn't
Running for your life?
Trying to save my life. I didn't want them to know just how I come along, through all of this and what the white folks had did to us, because I thought it was really mean. What they did to us was mean, and did it without a cause.
History on Rosewood. Some very, very good people still live in Florida. Has a history there. Right now, I'm going to play my favorite, what has become my favorite Father's Day song. My man, his name is Buddha Davis from Jacksonville. There's a lot of fathers out there that may have not always been there. And a lot of times during Father's Day, you're beaten across the head because of that. But I say when you fall down, you stand right back up. And it might mean nothing to a whole lot of people. You might get talked bad about. But there might be someone who cares about you very deeply, that it means the world to them that you're back in their life. This is Opio, my favorite Father's Day song, right here on Impact.
I hope my silence speaks volumes. Hope it speaks volumes. I hope my silence speaks volumes. I hope my silence speaks volumes. Where do I start? Where do I start? Big Papa, you my hero, that come from the heart. Being a dad, you made it an art. Man, you off the charts, always there to put me together when I was broke apart. I got too many stories about too many days. Too many occasions, love me too many ways. The days that I was scared, you was too many brave. Thank God for the dance that stayed, cause too many straight. What would I be without your presence? Just your presence is a present, always present to teach your son any lesson. When I'm down, you know the problem, not any guessing. If I'm in need, you give your last. Without any question. Made your sacrifices, made my life so exciting. Didn't understand it, but now I do. That's why I'm writing. My best friend, my partner when I'm fighting. Known Jag fan, but daddy, you are my titan. I can never repay, never repay. I just pray you like this song and hope you replay. I want the world to know I'm calling radio airways. Damn right, that's my poppy. Listen to this essay. When my money looking funny, man, you're there. And every single night for me, I know there's a prayer. Someone to depend on is very, very rare. I just hope you heard my thank yous. I spit them over snare. I just hope it speaks volumes. Well, I pray it speaks volumes. I just hope it speaks volumes. I just hope it speaks volumes.
All right, got to get out of here. This is Opio. I will see you next time on Impact.